Press Control to crouch.
The Crouch Peak Podcast.
Hello and hello and hello. Welcome back. All of those that are listening, this is the Crouch Peak Podcast. It's been a little bit, but I am still your host, Lucas at Dust2. So that's a new one. In case for those of you that are unfamiliar with what has been going on, Rushby Media is no longer. Not too long ago, we recently made the transition to Dust2.us, we being myself, Ryan, and all of our peers at the Rushby Media project that were fortunate enough to make the transition. So we are now at Dust2.us for those who are unaware, and moving forward and beyond, this podcast is now a Dust2 production. So from now on, you're going to be hearing me say it is a Dust2 production, no longer a Rushby Media production. So just want to give some quick thoughts as to as far as like that journey is concerned. That was a major capstone in my life as far as Rushby is concerned. A little bit under 3 years. At one point, I was just some guy who was going to events as a fan. And one day at IM Chicago 2018, I had a fantastic conversation with Hazed and Adren about Counter-Strike, and I received such positive feedback as far as what I knew about the game, about its history, and about my hopefulness towards the future. And I had such a positive response from those guys that I went home and I wrote a top 20 for that year, threw it up on Reddit, got amazing support from the community, turned that around, made a website. Not but 6 months later, I'm at Rushby Media, and the rest is history. I've made amazing friends, met amazing people along the way at LAN, online, everything in between. So thank you to everybody who has supported me personally. Thank you to everybody that supported Rushby Media along the way, supported all of our newest talents through that final hiring process, and help us make Rushby Media what it was. And for us to end up where we are now, myself, Ryan, and the gang that came with, I could not be more proud of them and myself. And I'm just so excited about what's to come. And just wanted to quickly, kind of shout that out. And yeah, so thanks a lot, guys. But nevertheless, we are not here to talk about my personal transitions. Just wanted to let you guys know on that for anyone who is unaware. So what we are here to talk about is, in fact, the RMR Open Qualifiers that happened this previous weekend for North America. So if anybody did not catch that, as a part of our new content flow with Dust2, we decided to do a watch party. This was a pretty big deal, obviously, heading into the major cycle for North America. We are back, hopefully, in the upswing of things, back in the healing process, as I kind of mentioned in my debut episode, I believe, as a part of Crouch Peak. Whether we're healing and are we getting back to a product that we are proud of, or do we want to get further? And of course, we want to get further. And this watch party was fantastic, honestly. I did not personally know what to expect when we got started with this. I did not know what to expect as far as meeting you guys on stream, having that conversation, and just being on camera live for such a long string of time. Not that I'm necessarily afraid of it or was worried about it. I just didn't know how it would translate, since I have seemingly only done recorded audio and some recorded video and the articles. So I had a blast, and I feel like the general masses did too. We had a lot of fun in stream. We got raids from Flom throughout, lots of support from players, whether they were coming on camera or just hanging out in chat. And I got to have a lot of great conversation with not just players and talent, but casual viewers as well throughout the weekend, and got to meet some cool people. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. So moving on to the matches, of course. What happened during those matches in question? Well, we had some banger Counter-Strike throughout this weekend, honestly. Like, this was a breath of fresh air after, a pretty upsetting North American Counter-Strike year last year with everything going on. Coming in and seeing how everything panned out was really exciting. Seeing the games live, of course, is always a blast to do, and then watching it with you guys was so fun. So starting with the first qualifier, of course, it was over the course of the entire weekend, and it was 2 days, 2 qualifiers, so 2 days per qualifier. And so the major storylines of that first open qualifier, I'm just going to kick it off with the elephant in the room. Strife beating Evil Geniuses 16-14 on Overpass in a best of one was something that I don't think anybody was ready for to set the tone as far as that weekend is concerned. They did bring it back to 16-14, but man, Strife looked really good throughout getting to 15. And EG, as we'll get to later on throughout this episode, were pretty flat throughout both brackets, honestly. Strife, of course, coming off of a very successful Fragadolphia LAN event and able to carry that success into online. And that's something we talked about throughout the weekend. We talked about, with Strife's in-game leader Stamina. We talked to him about this cycle, how everything's kind of gone, how important it was to get that LAN success and figure out kind of what translates online, in person, etc., and how to get certain things going within the team. And we just talked about that LAN boost and how important it was, honestly. Although they didn't qualify, they were extremely impressive throughout. Moving forward, obviously, we see Payne beating Party Astronauts on Nuke. And then we flip over to Payne to BNB on Nuke. And they get trounced just the same after beating Party Astronauts. And then BNB would eventually follow through this success and qualify. I believe it was a best of 3 over Mythic. So that was one of the first hiccups as far as getting notable teams kind of clustered up in the bracket early. And this is something that we're going to kind of bump into throughout the entirety of us talking about these brackets. These pockets of teams that probably should be further in the bracket meeting in earlier echelons of the bracket. And you see kind of lesser known teams just kind of duking it out in these other parts. And that was a big contention point throughout the weekend. Pretty much any player, any talent member that was coming on and having these conversations would give them their 2 cents about the bracket. So certainly a major talking point pretty much throughout the whole weekend. But moving forward, we immediately see Stanislaus' team, which has already been struggling throughout its inception, starting as Disconnected, now B-Hop, being funded by some local LAN center, I believe. They get bounced by Mythic 16-12 on Inferno in round 4. And this will be a recurring theme throughout both brackets. They don't make it past round 4 in the secondary qualifier either. And once we get to that point, you'll notice that they don't really lose to notable teams in either one of these brackets. We can definitely, for the sake of argument, we can be pretty confident about the notion that Mythic is not a, quote, notable team in terms of talent. As far as everything is concerned, when you just stack rank everything up. When we talk 7 spots, Mythic doesn't necessarily sit in that top 7. So, I don't want to undermine them, obviously. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's just, if you are Stanislaus, somebody who has, been to the highest points in Counter-Strike, besides pretty much a major final victory, you have a lot of high hopes for yourself. And I know that this team has been pretty deflated since its inception, but seeing him not make it past round 4 both times is pretty alarming. So I thought that was pretty noteworthy as well. And then right before we get into the BO3 matches, the other major match that kind of goes through, Team 1 squeaks through Carpe Diem in overtime. They beat them 19-16 on Overpass. And that's going to be a super important match, because right when we get into the best of 3 matches, that just immediately kicks off into Team 1 versus Godsent. And so 2 domestic rivals, obviously both being Brazilian teams. Godsent being the notable superior team on paper and on ranks and everything else. A team that you would expect to beat Team 1 pretty convincingly most of the time, obviously, when you're talking domestic rivals. But after Team 1 like gets through Carpe Diem, they come into this best of 3 qualifier match, and they end up upsetting Godsent. And like none of the matches were terribly close. Like I believe the closest map was like 16-10, and the other two were 16-9. So not necessarily a close series. And I did not personally watch this on stream. I don't quite remember what match we were watching at this time. It was Complexity ATK, if I remember correctly. So did not catch the round to round happenings of Team 1 and Godsent, but you always are going to want to see Godsent beat Team 1 if you're in that Godsent camp. If I'm a manager or a coach over at Godsent, that's an unacceptable loss when you are considering all of the variables of they had the decision of picking which RMR they want to go to, losing to a domestic rival, a baby brother in a lot of ways when you're considering this, and then the manner in which it happens. So they squeaked through Carpe Diem, and then they beat Godsent. So not a good tell in any capacity, but of course Godsent have the second qualifier to go, and so there's that to look forward to. So we move past that best of 3. Strife, after going through like a best of 1 triple overtime like brawl against Limitless, I believe, they like have to limp their way into the best of 3 against Liquid, and they get O2'd, as honestly we would expect. Stamina on stream did not carry a lot of remorse in regards to that best of 3, and overall seemed pretty positive about how everything panned out. So of course, thank you for his appearance and everything. And I would implore anybody to go back and watch those demos if you could, as far as like those streams, and just kind of digest what some of these players and talents had to say while we had them on stream. I can speak personally when I say that Stamina was like incredibly insightful as far as like what we wanted from him. Whenever we asked some questions, he offered so much for us. For me personally, I know that people in chat were really positive about what he was offering. So loved that free-flowing conversation. So nevertheless, moving away from that, of course, personally, I would say the series, or in general matches of the entire first day bracket, or the first bracket, of bracket number 1, Complexity and ATK in that best of 3 match was fantastic. Both maps went 16-14. It went Inferno Ancient, I believe, and those were just stellar maps. Both went 16-14, and wow, MOTM like on Inferno, he went like 0-1-13 to close the first half, and then he ends the game like 25-15 or something like that. Like he just has this unreal second half. He had like a 101 ADR swing from like first half to second half. Like this was like monumental, like historic, what MOTM was able to do from half 1 to half 2. So honestly, just set the tone for an amazing series. And honestly, it's one of those where you just wish both teams could win, because that was just so awesome. But nevertheless, we do move forward from that. Complexity does beat ATK, and they do end up qualifying. So what we do get out of the end of day 1, Open Qualifier 1, I keep doing that. We get Team 1 over Godsent to qualify. We get Team Liquid over Strife to qualify. We get Complexity over ATK to qualify. And we get Bad News Bears over Mythic to qualify. And they were subject to conversation in regards to like having quote unquote an easier pathway to qualification. But I haven't really been hung up on that too much. They still did have to beat Pain on Nuke, and then they had to beat Mythic in a best of 3. And, we can go deeper into the bracket later on to the tail end of the episode, but I don't want that to take away from what Bad News Bears did, because fundamentally they did qualify under their own performances. They took what they were able to control, and they controlled it in the manner they needed to, and they qualified. So they're not in control of the brackets. They're in control of their own destiny, and that's what they handled. So shout out to Bad News Bears for that. Shout out to Sheikh Zula. I know he was on stream at least once, not when I was on, but amazing stuff nevertheless, and just tireless work ethic, from him. Tireless effort, finding new talent and just making them great. So Did it again with Swan, Momo, and Pluto, and just nuts talent all around. So shout out to him. Moving into the second RMR, this was when the Wild West is open and for business. This is when, because now we're on the weekend. We don't have the weird scheduling conflicts with it being a Friday. We had a notable increase of teams attending. It jumped up like 70 teams. And not only that, there was one less spot because there's 8 spots, 4 already qualified, and then Fury is already in. So now we have 3 spots, do or die. Here we go. So we get through the initial matches, and nothing too out of the ordinary happens, barring what I mentioned with B-Hop getting knocked out. Orglis actually get bounced in round 3 this time by UYU. And honestly, it goes without saying when you consider that lineup, and of course being Daps led, not making it to the further depths of either bracket is absolutely disappointing. Even arguably more so than what Stanislaw is going through, just because Stanislaw doesn't have necessarily notable talent on his roster, and Daps is like showered with notable talent on this roster. So that's a little upsetting as far as like seeing that familiar talent come through. Me personally, I am fans of some of these players, so I would have liked to seen them get pushed to the limit in best of 3 action, etc., but it doesn't happen. Orglis doesn't make it out of round 4, or out of round 3 in the second attempt, and they get bounced. So pretty disappointing, obviously. Mythic going from being a best of 3 qualifier away from making it to Romania, don't make it out of round 3 against Carpe Diem in number 2. So 2 teams that are certainly notable, not making it that far as the second attempt is concerned. But again, the new seeding, the additional teams kind of leads to different brackets and blah, 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 blah. So what we get out of this by the time round 5 happens in Open Qualifier number 2, we're pretty much down to the final notable teams. There's a few stragglers here and there, but everything's kind of working itself out as far as like the iffy bracket is concerned. So round 5 begins, and we get ATK versus Godsent. So banger match, right? ATK take that match, 16-10 on Overpass, knocking out Godsent. That is humongous. That is far and away the best team as far as rank is concerned, eliminated. This is a team that I know a lot of people, players, viewers, talent, etc., had these guys going. They had Godsent qualifying. It would have been pretty foolish to assume that they weren't going to, and seeing them not is like, wow, that's humongous. That's like, as if like EG or Liquid, don't make it or whatever. So a top 20 HLTV ranked team not making it. ATK again showing out and making the most of the situation. Pain, after failing to qualify in yesterday's event, makes it through round 5. They destroy Game and Gladiators 16-4. So new look, new org, Game and Gladiators taken out. That Cynic buff, not meant to be as far as this first attempt, but obviously that's a team with new organizational backing, so excited to see what they end up with down the line. Strife, a team, again, high hopes. A lot of people had high hopes for them coming off the LAN win. They did beat EG, and they're in a best of 1 against Carpe Diem. They lose that 14-16 on Nuke. This one was pretty big in my opinion, because what that did was that negated the potential rematch for EG versus Strife. That was coming up in the very next game, assuming EG wins their game, which they ended up doing. So we almost got to see EG versus Strife 2, and it was not meant to be. So, that's what we get. That's just how the cookie crumbles. So right before the best of 3 qualifiers ensue, we get like the final chunk of important matches, which is EG knocking out Carpe Diem, and then Party Astronauts taking out ATK. So ATK, obviously a fan favorite by a lot of people. I know that they don't have a lot of North American players. They actually only have the one and an MOTM, but nevertheless, I thought they did a fantastic job, and they made for some amazing matches, and it would have been cool if they would have received a friendlier bracket, or in general, everything was just seeded better. So we got them in a best of 3 to kind of duke it out with some of these teams. And that's kind of what you were hoping for. A lot of these notable teams that got out, we didn't get to see them really show what they're capable of as far as best of 3 action is concerned. So some people don't agree with that. You're just expected to beat the best teams when you need to and qualify. So I understand both sides, but it is a little disappointing as somebody who wants to see the most Counter-Strike. So we're moving on to, of course, the best of 3 qualifiers. So this is like do or die time. This is it right here. The final day, the final matches. What do we got? So the final 4. This is crazy. We got Evil Geniuses, Party Astronauts, Pain Gaming, and Snake's Den. So obviously that's the outlier, right? Did not really mention them at all throughout this podcast. Well, Snake's Den actually in the first Open Qualifier got bounced by the qualifying Bad News Bears in that 3rd round. And then because they are lucky, I suppose, as far as the seeding is concerned, and, not to undermine Snake's Den, but when you look at the teams that they kind of ran through, they're not ATK, they're not Godsent, they're not Game Pain, not Strife, none of these teams. They're playing the other not nearly as notable teams, which I'm not disputing it. It's just how it happened. So we get these 4 teams left. And, before I move on, I just want to say the perseverance of Snake's Den to get bounced out in the early stages of the first bracket and then make it all the way through, before you add any other context, that is very impressive, and shout out to them for the resilience and like the drive to continue and keep going. Anyway, so we get EG, PA, Pain, and Snake's Den. So since there's only 3 spots, only 3 of these teams can qualify. So we get 2 best of 3s, and then the winners, good to go. The 2 losers duke it out. So we get Party Astronauts beating Snake's Den. We get Evil Geniuses beating Pain. That's 2 2-0s, which sets up Pain versus Snake's Den for the final seed. Okay. And I think this is pretty interesting as well. Nothing super important, but in the beginning of day 1, we had Pain versus Party Astronauts, and then Pain, after beating Party Astronauts, had to play Bad News Bears and lost. Okay. So seeing Pain and Party Astronauts come through after being eliminated in the first day, that is also some pretty noteworthy stuff, pretty important narrative in my opinion, and shout out to them for their resilience as well. And in general, Party Astronauts' resilience and just because of everything that's been going on the last 3-4 weeks, like that's awesome. So we're done now, and what do these teams look like? Well, as we move forward to the America's RMR, it looks pretty good, honestly. I don't have too many disputes when you look at the North American side of things. You have Furia, who automatically qualified because of their successes at Stockholm. And then the other 7, in no particular order as far as seeding is concerned, just because that's something we'll talk about, once we get everything kind of played out and we look to the America's RMR and how all that works out. So we're looking at Complexity, Liquid, Bad News Bears, Team 1, Party Astronauts, Evil Geniuses, Pain Gaming, all joining Furia Esports. So we got the 3 Brazilian representation, and we got the 5 North America representation. So, 4. That was some NA math right there. So general thoughts when looking at this stuff. Without a doubt, Godsent missed out. That's the biggest upset. Them missing out is number 1 de facto boo-boo. They were the highest rated HLTV team. They were inside the top 20 prior to this event. Incredible surges of momentum at points last year. Of course, they did have ups and downs. I'm not going to dispute that. But the upside of what we saw from Godsent it left a lot to be excited for. And they were seeing a lot of success over North American teams anyway. So definitely a shoo-in. So when you factor in the fact they lose to a domestic rival, somebody that is considered a baby brother, okay, fine. Well, let's move on to the next one. Well, you get beat by ATK as well. So now you're losing to domestic rival that is theoretically lesser than you, is how they should perceive it. They should perceive Team 1 as lesser than you. And then ATK, a team that's lesser than you. Because again, you are Godsent. You are a top 20 team, and you have certain thresholds you expect to meet, certain standards you'd like to set. And it just did not happen. So if putting your brain space in that camp, that's very disappointing. Regarding Strafe and ATK, very, very impressive throughout, even though that they were unable to qualify. Pretty much all their games were exciting. Pretty much all of them were close. And me personally, it left me wanting more. And I can't wait to see these two teams. And I feel confident when I say that others probably believe that as well. So, yeah, just shout out to Strife and ATK, the hard work they put in. Again, Stamina was very vocal about the effort that they put in just over the last 3 weeks. Just kind of getting ready for their slew of league games that comes after this RMR, and then Philadelphia prior. And of course, the impact that head coach Crisby brought in just from his acquisition really just gave a lot of insight as to what coaches do for teams. So got to respect the coaches, man. You just got to. And of course, ATK just been stellar. Bowden was so fun to watch. MOTM is always a treat. One of my favorite players to watch. He's just so exciting. And yeah, just shout out to those guys, both those teams. As I mentioned earlier, Evil Geniuses looked incredibly flat. As of right now, if this product does not change, I think that they get thwomped at Romania. And of course, there are teams also here that would get thwomped, but you have to kind of consider who they are. They are Evil Geniuses, 3 ex-major winners. I say that like they don't still have the victory. Sorry. But you just expect a lot more from Evil Geniuses. So if they do go to Romania and just get decimated, that is a little deflating than if, say, like, just jumping over to the South American qualifier, Leviathan. Like, let's say they just get beaten up. It's like, okay, you're expecting that from a smaller team. E.g., you're expecting, like, some pushback. Moving away from that, honestly, just because I don't want to beat a dead horse. That's been the topic of conversation as far as EG. They've been the topic for a while now. Even throughout the weekend. Just going to touch back on Dabs and Stanislaw. It's so crazy how their two careers just kind of intertwined constantly. Talking about Evil Geniuses, the time on NRG, their time on Liquid, and then now in like an Optic. And then like now in this kind of unfortunate sense, they're both intertwined because of their failures. So I think that's interesting. Neither of them made it out of round 4, which is pretty upsetting. I'm going to go back to Daps, a little bit more upsetting just because of what I value him as like a thought leader, as an in-game leader, and what they were able to do was incredibly flat. And I know Kusta's coming in after a short time and all of that stuff, but I'm not even saying they had to make it all the way through, just making it further. And don't quote me on this, but I believe Elige on stream was pretty confident about Orglis's chances to at least go deep. I'm not going to say he said they should qualify, but I do recall him being at least shocked that they didn't make it a little further. So even fellow peers thought that was pretty shocking, and I'm sure the fans do as well. Of course, the bracket was a talking point. There's no doubt about that. There was a lot of discussion as far as, was it randomly seeded because of ELO? Were there some manual decisions that came in and fixed the random seeding, or was it all manual, or what, kind of how did that work? But honestly, I think largely we had too many matchups that happened too early. There was too many instances of unknown teams going deeper because they beat all other unknown teams. And yeah, like we had Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses slated for like a qualification match in the first qualifier if they didn't lose the Strife. And like that's probably not something that we want. We probably wanted them kind of separated. And that's just speaking from a logistics standpoint, just keeping the best teams separated because that's kind of how you seed brackets. So, I'm not going to dispute the fact that they should not play. Any team that wants to be successful at the major needs to be able to beat any team in this bracket, and that's obvious, right? Especially when you consider that North America is a weaker continent, a weaker region in terms of global Counter-Strike. So any team here, if you're mad because you played the harder teams, obviously that's not a good look because like look at the EU qualifiers, those are just grueling, obviously. But seeing in the first open qualifier, seeing like Bad News Bears, Party Astronaut, and Pain clustered together, that's pretty upsetting, especially as early as it did. And then like round of 16 on the open qualifier number 2, we had ATK Godsent and Party Astronauts bunched up. But then on the other side of the bracket, we had like Evil Geniuses hanging out all by themselves with just Strife and Carpe Diem. And again, this could be a byproduct of the ELO seeding, which is like, if that's the case and it's all predicated on automated systems, that's really unfortunate, just because like when I was doing some digging, I noticed that Evil Geniuses is not a level 10 team collectively because of Malik's Face It rank. So like, you're talking a coach who wasn't even like technically allowed to have his presence be felt. And then like you have these definitely antiquated systems of having like random seeding because of ELO like affect that. Like I think that is just like none of that makes sense. None of it. So like have somebody go in there and do some manual seeding, because like this is just, largely unacceptable. And then of course, like we talk about BNB, being like the subject of, criticism, I guess. I'm not personally criticizing them, but I do know that some people were questioning like, oh, these guys came through and, all they had to do was beat Pain in a best of 1 and Mythic in a best of 3, but that is how the cookie crumbles. I'm not saying we need to negate the legitimacy of any of these victories, but moving forward, we should change this. And if anybody did manual seeding for this event, either of these brackets, if legitimately somebody was on site doing manual seeding in any capacity for this stuff, you should not be allowed to do it anymore. Like, I'm sorry if like that's offensive to the person hearing that, if there even is a person, but like if I did this seating manually and I saw how this ensued over the weekend, like I would personally be embarrassed. So let's get like some kind of presence as far as like NA is felt. Like let's get people doing it. Like there were so many people that were saying, oh, I would have done it for free. I would have given my 2 cents for free, et cetera, et cetera. And like personally, I would have as well. So, but nevertheless, in closing, my final 2 cents on that are, no matter what, you need to beat any team in this bracket if you want to qualify. But again, just hammering that down, we needed those really storyline driven matches to happen later on in the bracket. Like Party Astronauts and Pain should not have played on Nuke so soon in that bracket and then immediately follows up with BNB Pain. Like that stuff is just, that should not happen. Nor should Liquid and EG probably have played day 1, but that one might be a little less of a strong argument. But nevertheless, let's just get better seeding next time, and I think we all can agree on that, honestly. But definitely dodged a bullet, because when I look at the 7 teams that qualified, we're still okay. Like we didn't get some unknown pug team just coming in here and beating a bunch of nobodies and then making it or whatever. Or we didn't get people who like were going to qualify and then like not go to Romania. We got a group of talent that is going to progress and take this seriously, which is awesome. But that's pretty much all I have as far as like my 2 cents on that. All in all, I thought the games were fantastic. The stream was stellar. Loved the experience. It was my first time doing as much live content, especially like in succession like that. So thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to everybody as far as players and talent that personally came on. While I was on stream, I personally had the luxury of speaking with Anton, analyst of Complexity, Koi, coach, analyst, jack of all trades for Davenport University and pretty much all of NA. Elige, of course, Rifler for Team Liquid, Stamina, of course, in-game leader for Strife, Note, writer at HLTV, Mix, analyst, Cole, also known as Exner, caster, and then, of course, Travis, caster. Thank you to all of those individuals that showed up on stream, had conversations live on stream with us, bounced a lot of great ideas, had a lot of fun stories to talk about with you guys. And I'd like to say, I feel confident when I say, I met some great people. Can't wait to meet these people at LAN and, actually make some friends in a tangible sense. So, and that's what this stuff is about. This weekend was a good indication of like what I do this for. It was a really like awesome awakening and refresher course as to like why I'm so driven about this stuff. It's easy to get sucked in because, ego stuff and all that. But fundamentally, I do this because like I love Counter-Strike. and I love North American Counter-Strike, and I love bouncing these ideas off of you guys. And like I remember Anton and Koi were in with us, and somebody like made in chat, somebody made like a comment about making an amendment to Mirage in Underpass. And Koi and Anton were both very receptive to it. And this was just somebody in chat. And it's like when you get this kind of free-flowing conversation and you don't just gatekeep people because you know, they're not like quote well known in the scene and all this stuff and blah blah blah, and you just get this free flowing open conversation with people who genuinely love it. It makes for some beautiful conversation, honestly, and like I had a blast, and I met some great people in chat and on stream. So honestly, thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to all your positive support, even the people who didn't say a freaking word. Like, thank you for just lurking. Thanks to all the subs, all the follows, all the positive responses to me personally, all the follows. And lastly, shout out to Flom for taking his platform that he grew, and he spent his own personal time to grow, and he doesn't owe it to anybody to spread that to anyone, but he did at least 3 times throughout the weekend. He rated the Dust2 US stream. So super shout out to Flom. I personally had never spoken to him prior to this event, and we may not have spoken yet in the flesh, but we got to have some good conversation on Twitter in regards to just some banter and stuff. And that was just really awesome that he was able to so easily take the platform that he grew and just give it to us when he was offline. So that's just amazing stuff. And we love that kind of stuff. And that's what's going to make NACS amazing again. And yeah, I just can't wait to see where we are in 6 months from now. Not even just the scene, but Dust2 as well. So honestly, guys, I'm just going on about whatever. But, you know, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm going to kind of wrap this up. We're getting closer to 40 minutes now. So I know it was about a month or so. I apologize for the delay in episode releases. I know that when I started this, I really wanted to aim for consistency and being, you know, just active with everybody and not being one of those podcasts that fizzles out right away just because they don't, you know, because of whatever. With the entire move to Dust2 and just kind of getting settled in and getting the content flowing on the website, I needed to kind of put this on the back burner. But I'm just so excited to get this going with Dust2. I'm so excited to move forward with this and grow with you guys. And I feel like I really got a good sense of clarity after this weekend of just really figuring out, figuring everything out as far as like what we need at Dust2, what we need on this podcast, what we need in the scene, and what I need personally just to be happy about the kind of content I'm producing. So I'm ranting, which is crazy on a podcast, right? And me going on a rant, right? So I'm just going to kind of leave it there, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, follow the podcast, Crouch_Peak, Peek. Hit me up on Twitter at Lucas at I almost did it. At Lucas at Dust2. At Lucas at Dust2. DUST number 2. Hit me up, guys, on either one of them socials, and follow me, DM me, whatever you guys want. And just a great weekend. I'm really excited to keep going. So thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you at the next episode.
Press Control to crouch.
The Crouch Peak Podcast.